We're on. It's all right. I love it when technicians give me a look as if to go, is that microphone on or not? It's definitely on. Thanks, mate. Thank you for that. Beautiful job. Welcome, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure and an honour to be here. This is the residential theatre at the Solar and Storage event, as you know, otherwise you wouldn't be here. I am a Highs ambassador. Highs is a consumer code organisation which supports installers, but at the same time provides an enormous amount of protection for consumers. Johnny here is basically my boss, so I've got to be really nice to him today, because he's very, very senior at Highs, and he pays my wages, so I've got to be very polite to him. We've then got alongside Johnny, we've got Ian Hooper from Install, we've got Elliot Burnett from Spark Energy UK, and right at the end, from City Plumbing, we've got Hemel Mojaria. Have I pronounced your surname right? Excellent. Did you just do a little kind of arm raise, like you were like really happy? I love that. You're an award winner. You need the mic, mate. You need the mic. It's called sound. And we
Testing,
need it.
one,
Yeah,
two,
let's
one,
go.
two.
What you're an award winner for?
Rising Star.
Rising Star. Why are you a rising star?
I've no idea.
Come on, they must have had when you were given the award, they must have said, he has won it because of this. Go on, pick yourself up. Don't be too modest.
It's because I shine bright.
Shines bright.
Thank you, Elliot.
You're basically walking sunshine, which is just what we need at a solar event. You're just glowing everywhere you go. I love that. I'm jumping around with my cue card. Sorry, being very unprofessional. We're basically talking about lots of things associated with the industry. The main purpose today is how do you future-proof your solar business? This is really, really important. So you've got so many companies who have set up solar companies and might have this massive boom when they first launch, and then how do you maintain that? How do you grow the business? And why is it so important for you to do certain things, which we're going to talk about today, that will help you grow your business and be sustainable over a long period of time. We're going to look at scaling strategies. I'm going to learn stuff today. Scaling strategies, diversification, cash flow, and recurring revenue. All the things that could help you turn your business that's quite small to begin with and grow it over many, many, many years and keep coming back to this event. Let's kick off with, I think, something that's massively important, and that's diversification. You gents are going to have to pass that microphone down the line for each one to kick off to. Now let's go first with you, Meg. Come on, diversification. Why do you think it's important for an installer to be diverse?
So, we started Spark 2 years ago, and as a company like myself, we're spending a hell of a lot in marketing. And one of the main things that we want from a customer is to have a customer for life. So how would you get a customer to be yours for life? Well, you need to diversify into different products. Most of you here will predominantly fit residential solar and battery. You then want that customer for life. You then start going into air source heat pumps. You then diversify. You then go into boilers. You then may have that customer that has other needs. For example, they own a business. Does that business need commercial solar? So you then start opening yourself up to other avenues, which then lead into reoccurring revenue, which is one of the main key things of keeping one of your customers happy and keeping your business stable, essentially. It's one of the key things that we've really learned at Spark, and why we've been able to grow so very quickly, considering we've only started 2 years ago.
Just 2 years ago?
Just 2 years.
Just talk us through the journey of how you did diversify, where you absolutely began, and then why you made the choices you made.
So it all starts off with your lead generation. Your lead generation is key to gaining key customers that you can ultimately then sell to. You then diversify. So one of the things that we've done is partnerships are very key to how you diversify. Key strategies implemented alongside with, for example, wholesalers. Getting your kit and the equipment quickly to be able to supply quick installations, which then lead into your cash flow headaches then become irrelevant if you're managing your good cash flow. So, I mean, I can sense that I'm waffling on because it's not a hard thing to do when you're in the middle of it.
Yeah.
However, when you're trying to explain all the different mechanics around how you diversify, it's it's very hard. So one of the main things that Spark have done so well is having key partnerships with different products. So we sell an ecosystem. It allows us to do solar and battery. We work very closely with a manufacturer called EcoFlow. EcoFlow then have smart light bulbs, they have smart plugs, they then have air source heat pumps, they have EV chargers, which then allows you to then go after the same customer to be able to offer a whole suite of products. How many people here have re-engaged their customers to be able to then sell them another product? So you would think that it's bread and butter, but when you're in the trenches, it's not always that easy. You're trying to juggle so many plates at any one time. Having a key strategy to be able to re-engage these customers alongside a suite of products that you can then go and re-engage with to the customer, it's a lot to take on. And so many businesses get it wrong, but having that...
I was actually just about to ask, what if you don't mind me saying this, what mistakes did you make? Like, what were the bigger...
What mistakes haven't I made?
I just think it's really important that if someone's thinking about diversifying in their business, is there something now that where you look back and you think, okay, we could have done that better, how would we have done that differently? And obviously you've been resilient and you've come through it, but what challenges did you face in diversifying?
One of the main things that we struggled with, especially being a startup, is recruitment. Having key people to help you, especially if you are a small business and you're wanting to grow and expand rapidly, have a good recruitment strategy, because you need key people around you that you can lean on to help you expand. I didn't learn that quick enough, if I'm completely honest. We were outsourcing most of our recruitment. We didn't necessarily know what we were doing. Then we brought in an internal recruitment manager and things just exploded. We got the right people in to be able to assist the management team.
Come on, we'll hand the mic over to you, mate. Let's start from the very top with you, diversification. What do you think about it? Why is it so important for an installer?
So I think Elliot's touched on a few key points. So we've got 70,000 installers trading with City Plumbing in any given year, and we're now finding our customers are wanting to diversify for the main reason of cash flow. So if you're a solar installer, you're really busy in the summer months. When it gets to the winter months, you're not as busy. And therefore managing that cash through them real key focus months of the year is make or break your business. And therefore we're now talking to installers and educating them on business and how businesses run, and recruitment's a big thing we talk about. But cash flow is all about how do I sustain my business for the 12-month cycle we need to go through. And I'm hoping, Elliot, you're finding a lot of your leads when you've installed solar, customers are coming to you and going, I've now got excess energy, what do I use that for? Well, actually use that to heat your home. And suddenly that's a free lead for you to generate more work through the winter months where heat pump installs are significantly higher and the requirement for that is significantly more. So actually utilising your skill set when you're an MCS installer for solar, it becomes so much more easier to become an MCS installer for a heat pump, because you know how the logistics work and how the forms and operations work around that, to then diversify your business into that. It's such a sort of not easy thing to do, but it's never easy, but an easier path into sort of keeping your business growing into the future.
And Elliot talked about recruitment being a challenge. What's been the challenge for you for the business you're in?
So I think our challenge is absolutely making sure we're there for the installer. As installers are going through the journey of diversification, growing, the pains they go through, it's important that we as a merchant are really there for the likes of Elliot and supporting them through them difficult times, because growing in any business is challenging. Being a multiple billion-pound business, people think it's easier for us, and actually we have our challenges as well. We're heavily boiler focused. People who know City Plumbing for the boilers we sell, we're now probably one of the top 5-6 solar distributors in the UK, but our name, our brand doesn't really help us push that forward. And Elliot only heard about City Plumbing because of this panel, and we've spoken on a couple of calls. So actually getting our name out there to be a sort of a partner for the installer, not just in traditional heating categories, but in more renewable categories, is probably our biggest challenge.
Ian, let's come to you. Diversification. Why is it important for an installer?
Well, I sit across a couple of hundred installers who use our platform, so a bit closer? Okay, thank you. We sit across a couple of hundred installers, so I can say what I witnessed my side of the coin, less so on your side of the coin, which is actually on the operational side.
Just for someone that doesn't know install, can you just describe your business?
Yeah, no problem. So what we do is we provide a solution for installers to automate the whole back end of their system. So we save them approximately a day amount of time on physical paperwork to take a MTS installation from start to completion. And there's a number of things we do within that wrapper. We work across clients who are in the able to pay market, such as yourself, but also a big part of the diversification I'm seeing across our client base is people going into the funded sector as well, or coming across from the funded sector into the able to pay market so that they can use sort of a core base of primary engineers and spread that through the year so they're not suffering from choppy cash flow, for want of a better word. Yeah, the solar case there. But that's really what I see from my side. I can't really comment too much about diversification within a business other than what I typically see is geographic diversification, so people expanding further afield, people moving into air source heat pumps, as you mentioned. But I think a lot of people misunderstand what that entails. So scaling a solar business versus scaling an air source business is entirely different. Like, I can't...
How?
So... Gosh, how long have we got?
We've got 30 minutes.
So
I mean,
really,
if you can do that answer in 5, then you can get to the other questions, but go on.
so what we see on the air source side of the business is that the whole industry is really strangled by a limited supply of quality engineers. Right, so if we take the funded sector, which is Eco4 or social housing decarbonisation, these are whole house measures, right? So whilst there are plenty, if you were to look at sort of MCS, all the installers that operate there are approximately 2,000 air source heat pump installers, right? And there's approximately 3,000 PV installers, and somewhere in the middle of that Venn diagram, there's about 800 that overlap. Now, diversifying, if you're an air source heat pump installer into PV, is actually slightly easier, I would say, because you can access a large supply of different people who are in that sector, and there's sort of a residual amount of people who've been working in there for the last 15 years. Air source is much newer as a technology. People on the training side, there's a real bottleneck there. So if you've got ambitions to scale a business to hundreds of installations a month, your bottleneck is entirely recruitment of quality engineers.
So you only took a minute and a half to give a very solid answer, mate. You nailed it.
Getting better.
Absolutely nailed it, which is great. And Johnny, do you want to jump in on this one, or do you want to jump in on the next question? Do you want to do a bit about diversification? Because you as a consumer cord, you're helping and advising installers all the time with their business model in many, many different ways. How do you see diversification being the challenge?
Yeah, so diversification for us it's paramount. You know, we're in an industry, and we call it the solar industry, but we'd be remiss really to call it that. We're in the renewable industry. You know, I look across now and I'm seeing a couple of installers that are, as mentioned, in part of that 800 here, that are in solar and air source, but effectively, we as a consumer code at Highs, we've almost come away from saying we deal in renewables. We actually deal in energy efficiency, because, you know, you mentioned earlier about the winter months and things like that. It's great having solar, it's great having an air source, but if you haven't got LED light bulbs, you haven't got loft insulation, and other things, these secondary measures to really sort of look after those primary measures, you're not doing a good enough job. So in terms of like diversifying your business itself, you need to be ready for what the industry demands of you as an installer at that time. We spoke, you know, earlier about what's important for an installer, and it's in understanding the consumer's needs. But a consumer's needs might not necessarily just be a 4 kilowatt system and a battery. It might be a 4 kilowatt system and a battery with an EDI and LED and an EV charger. And it's the installers that are really growing above and beyond, and we talk about Octopus and Eon and Project Solar and things like that. The companies that are really, really, really doing well are the companies that are really sort of like well versed in every product that's out there on the market. You know, Elliot, we have a lot of conversations, don't we, in terms of like what's next for Spark and where do you go from here, and you know, we look at all these different products that are coming in, hydrogen, things like that. The installers that aren't standing still, the installers that are really sort of like looking at the next product, the next technology, what the consumer's looking for, they're the installers that are winning.
Is that quite I mean, I know it's difficult, but is it very difficult when you're trying to stay current, you're trying to understand all the products out there, what the opportunities are. The technology is moving so quickly. I mean, when I looked at solar panel installs 15 years ago, it's completely different now than what it was back then. It must be really difficult to stay current and cutting edge on so many pieces of technology when you're trying to diversify. I mean, even if you were just doing air source heat pumps, that would be a big enough challenge. How do you stay current as an installer, especially if you're a small business?
You don't. There's no such thing as staying current. I'm just looking behind you and seeing a 485 watt battery panel, and I'm thinking, I was here last year and it was 385. How has it gone up? And there's no such thing as staying current. We're in too much of a progressive and forward modern thinking industry now, and you have to understand what's going on in the industry. There's a lot of changes, MCS changes, government changes, Eco 4 to Eco 5 changes. The ones that are going to be staying current effectively without sort of contradicting myself are the ones who are actually moving with the times. The ones who are moving with the times are the ones who are actually staying current, because I don't think there is any such thing as current anymore. What's here today won't be here tomorrow.
Let's jump on to something else, because even now my brain's ticking over thinking, how do you diversify and become a specialist in something and stay current and be a specialist but diversify in your business? It sounds like you're going to be doing a lot of juggling to make it all work. And it's also from a business point of view, it's managing that expansion, isn't it? You're going to be very controlled. You're going to reach a certain limit in something that you're doing and you think, right, I'll diversify, but what do I need to be able to do that in terms of engineers and skills, money, revenue? It's tough, very tough balance to strike.
Yeah, I spoke to an installer earlier, and I kind of got annoyed because he was really sort of like advertising and blowing up the fact that he only deals with properties that are like 7 bedrooms or bigger. And he said, that's all we deal with, we're a premium installer. And I'm thinking that's not what premium means, because the fact that you deal with customers who have got a ton of surplus money, that doesn't make you a premium installer. It just means that you like to go for people who've got a lot of money. That's fine, there's no problem. But in order to call yourself a specialist now, again, contradictory, being a specialist means you can do everything. That's what makes you special in this industry. If you can only do one thing, I assure you, you are not special. You are just good at one thing, and that's absolutely
You're just
fine.
specialising, aren't you, rather than being special?
Absolutely, and again, there's absolutely nothing wrong with being really good at one thing. People say the best lane to stay in is in your own, and that way you're not going to get in front of other people, and people aren't going to get in front of you if that's what you're really good at. But people like Elliot, and especially people like Ian. Sorry, it's just because of Thor there. You're special as well, by the way. These guys, but Ian very specifically, what he does is so niche that other people who come around, and we said this yesterday, for a company who's not been going that long, and I've got companies who have been trading for 10, 15 years, and they're coming to me, and I'm saying, oh, well, what do you do? Well, we're trying to be like Instool. And I said this to him last night, well, about 11 hours ago, this morning actually, in the bar, but I said this to him, and he said, that is embarrassing for me to hear that, the fact that these companies who've been trading for so long is like a software company, and they're trying to emulate a company that's been trading less than 3 years. So
I suppose another thing it sounds really obvious, it's understanding your market, where you are. You talked about geography. If you've got an amazing opportunity for solar and there's a massive demand for it, and people are recommending you to other people, you're going to stick in the solar business as much as possible. You might have to do a little bit of diversification, but it's being a master when you need to be a master if you like to be brilliant at that one particular industry or part of an industry, and then diversify if you think that you need to. So that's local demand, local need, and your local business, I suppose, isn't it? Let's come on to kind of revenue streams, creating passive or recurring revenue streams within the business. Elliot, come on, I'm going to give you the mic first. Like, what opportunities do you see for creating passive and recurring revenue streams in the business?
So that very much the theme of all of this is everything that we're already going back over. Diversification unlocks reoccurring revenue. If you have a customer for life and you are diversifying, you can go into other products, you're naturally going to start reoccurring extra revenue. Jonathan's also mentioned about staying current. For installers, especially like like myself, we keep one eye on the here and now, and one eye on what's actually coming next. We're in an industry where a hell of a lot of money is being spent and invested, so things are changing rapidly. One of the next things which will be coming down the line in the next couple of years, which will unlock a huge amount of recurring revenue, is demand response and flexibility. As the nature of our grid then changes, the installers...
Could you just explain that in a little bit more detail? Because I mean, there's probably some real experts here, and there might be others who think, what the hell does that mean?
So
that was me, by the way.
Yeah, so the demand response is a way of engaging customers. It's normally typically focused around commercial sized batteries at the moment, and being able to rely on the grid when it drops out of frequency. They can call up all of these battery assets to then dump that load back into the grid, where the commercial asset then gets compensated very heavily as a kind of aggregator. Now, with legislation changing of P415 and new legislation which has just been introduced, with the introduction of new half-hour smart meters, it now means that the consumers, your household customers, if they have battery capacity, will also now be able to trade on capacity market through demand response. Now, all of this is fairly new. The legislation's only just come out, but how many people actually knew about it? As this market and as this industry grows and the needs of the country and our energy demands increase, which is the whole reason that we sell, customers are future-proofing themselves, because all of our capacity is going to have to increase to meet demand. Electric cars, we're being forced to have electric cars. Again, if you're selling and you're diversifying because you can install a load of EV chargers, fantastic. But you now have all this extra battery capacity that you can then use to then flip a customer into demand response. Now, virtual power plants becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. They are going to need a distribution network of installers to be able to go and give the customer the opportunity to opt into demand response, to have this capacity, because you've got a power station on your roof. You can supplement the grid, and by giving back to those customers which don't, and therefore it makes this industry, what we all hope for, much cheaper. The end customer wants to protect themselves and lower their bills, and ultimately being able to do that helps out everybody.
So just bringing it back a little bit, as an installer, how can you get recurring or passive revenue streams?
So for us, it's keeping your eye on the ball, being able to opt in, building partnerships, noticing actually when you have an opportunity to opt into these. For example, there are already manufacturers which are out there which will allow you to give this opportunity to a customer. There's a couple here today. Go and speak to Levelize. Fantastic demand response, but that will allow you to then obtain reoccurring revenue that way. Tariffs, for example, working alongside, and if you've got spare capacity to actually go and fit and install for somebody else, you don't want to be paying your overheads for your fitting teams, especially for those of you that do have your own house fitting teams. You've got companies out there like Octopus, for example, doing great things on the market, but they need to install a hell of a lot of capacity because they're selling a load of jobs. Well, I've got teams which are available, which you become a trusted partner. They pay you for that, so therefore you have recurring revenue. You can then go and service that client on their behalf. So there's lots of opportunities out there if you know where to look.
Emil, do you want to jump on this? Passive and recurring revenue streams.
Thank you. So I think the biggest challenge in business is working capital, yeah? So to manage your working capital, we talked about summer, winter months and all that sort of stuff earlier, but having that recurring revenue, knowing that you've got an amount of cash coming into your business on a regular basis is so important. And us as consumers, us as homeowners, always go to our trusted partners. So Elliot, as a solar installer, if I go to his website, now does EV and now does air source and now does all the other technologies, electric heating is starting to come a thing as well. Suddenly it's easier for me to come back to you and say, Elliot, do me a favor, can you fit my EV charger, can you do that? It's always hard to find a trusted tradesman. So as soon as we've got that relationship as a homeowner, that unlocks massive potential for installers, which again secures your business for the future and allows you to grow. That incoming steady revenue has to be critical for any business's success.
So, do you want to come in on that, Tony, or I don't mind? Recurring passive revenue streams.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk sort of like very direct and very brash, really. If we think what the...
Careful.
I'm doing something new. So in terms of what we think of for the average domestic customer in the solar PV market for a 4 kilowatt system and a battery in 2022 to 2025, we're talking around £8,000 to £10,000, all right? If you're earning less than that, that's absolutely fine. If you're earning more than that, you project solar. Anyway, so every customer really, if you're getting them at £8,000, effectively they could be worth £20,000 to £30,000 for you over the lifetime. You know, we're talking about earlier about diversification, different products, etc., etc. If you're going in directly and you're selling a 4 kilowatt system and a battery, inevitably at some point they're going to look at electric vehicles. You know, I was heavily against electric vehicles for a very long time.
Why?
I don't know.
You said it. I mean,
Yeah,
you just
no,
stick your neck out there. Come on, mate. Why?
I think it was danger of the unknown, you know, and you know it's what you've always known is a 4 litre X5 diesel, you know, turning up to these solar companies and they're going, something wrong here, pal. You're coming
I'm
here.
not going to interrogate you on this because we could go down
It's fine.
a real rabbit hole. So
I had it off
let's
my mum
go
for a
back.
very
Go
long
on.
time.
Go
So,
on.
you know, so these customers, they're going to come back and ultimately they're going to want an EV charger. And then when you're there selling them an EV charger, you're going to look back at the system and they might want bird proofing, you know. And then 2 years down the line, you're going to ask them, would you like me to come and service and maintain your installation? You want to make sure it's performing as expected. Now, obviously, we've got these apps now and things like Solar Edge where you can keep a really good eye on the progression of that installation, degradation, etc., etc. But what installers now can charge for a service and maintenance package in order to ensure that consumers still receiving the SEG and things like that, you can go back out every single year. You know, panel cleaning, that's a really big thing now, and I've seen like 4 stands for panel cleaning. I didn't think it was getting that big, but again, you have these, especially where I live on the northwest, on the coast, and our panels are covered, you know, and again, that affects performance. So every single one of these things is an extra sell, it's an extra add, you know, and then we always talk about who is the easiest customer. That is a referral. So the second that you've gone out and you've put your banner out on the street to let them know that you're on the roof and you're cleaning these panels, next door neighbour comes out, what are they doing? We'd like that as well. So that's the recurring revenue, is effectively every single customer that you've had a good experience with, more than likely you can go back into that customer and you can get money.
And as well as having, I mean, service and maintenance is massive, but it leads us nicely actually into the third thing I wanted to talk about, which is technology, because surely people will think about upgrades at some point. If you've got this technology and you're used to it, I mean, it's like having a great television, isn't it? You have a TV for a while, new tech comes out, there's something that's a bit better looking, might be a bit more energy efficient, and you go, do you know what, I've had that for 10 years, I'm going to do an upgrade. That must be a massive opportunity. So the balance of service and maintenance with developments in technology and then people looking to do upgrades of that technology is massive, surely.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, there's been a huge negative stigma around efficiency upgrades in the past, around vulnerable customs and things like that. Highest consumer code, we've come down very heavily on that to maintain.
Just talk about that a minute. Like, what do you mean by
so
that?
effectively, if you think about it now, there's a lot of cowboys out there. They're always looking to make quick money and money.
Cowgirls, by the way.
Oh, sorry, other types of cow people exist.
And cows.
So you'll get me going now. And effectively, what we've seen in the past, we've seen some extreme horror stories, is companies going out there and telling these consumers that the panels are no longer working. You know, they've got no knowledge of that happening, and they're gaining entry into these vulnerable customers' homes. They're going up into the loft, they're going to where the batteries are, not necessarily in the loft, and they're turning the power off. You know, and we've seen some horrific stories, and they've come back down to the customer. You know, we've seen it all the time. The MOT, your brakes and your windows are going to need clean, and etc., etc. And before you know it, these companies are now saying, yeah, your battery's not performing, we're going to need to upgrade that, so we'll give you 15 kilowatts of battery to power your 4 panels that are on the roof, and I think that'll be perfect. And it's horrendous.
But in fairness, that's always existed in the industry forever, and let's be honest, it probably always will. It's like any business anywhere. There's always going to be someone who's going to try it on. and do something dodgy.
There is.
You know, whether it's insurance, architects.
Yeah.
You know, they're all going to be. There might be a minority, but they're always going to be there.
Yeah, bad people exist. Bad people exist. There's going to be people in this room, hopefully not in front of me right now, but there's going to be people in this room who have negative intentions, and not because they naturally want to hurt people, but they just want to cut a lot of corners. That's what we're there for. That's what MCS have been there for. Flexi-Hub, we're really there, you know, to sort of stamp down on that industry, to effectively clean it up for the cowgirls, cowboys, and cow others. You know, to make sure that we are sort of really policing that sector and sort of get rid of that really negative stigma.
Yeah. Ian, can I come to you? Technology, things moving on, growth.
Yeah, well, so our side, we really deal with technology on the installer side versus the consumer fronting element of it. Given the audience today, I'll spend a little bit of time talking about that. So what we've witnessed in the past, particularly 18 months, is that the administration of the back end of an installer's business really is throttling their revenue and profit. So by that I mean they can't get the product throughput or the project throughput that they're wanting to scale up that business. So that's what we've doubled down on, and we kind of break our model into sort of 4 buckets, if you like. The first thing we would talk about with any potential installer would be the idea of efficiency. So if let's take a typical installer, let's call it Barry, right? He's just come into the solar industry. What is Barry doing? He is really the bottleneck of his own business. He needs to lay a foundation that he can put what's in his head down into a tool which he can then build a business around and bring other people around, because then he can scale bigger than the one man that he is, okay? So there's a real efficiency driver here. The next thing to say is that if you actually look through an MCS or Flexi-Hub installation, take, I don't know, an array with batteries, let's say it's 2 strings, there's about 1,000 data entry points for a typical installation. It's 1,000, right? So we've managed to chop that down by 70%, which means saving the guts of a day's worth of just pure punching in information. And then you've got automation which goes alongside that. So we've just done an integration, or finishing up the integration with Highs at the minute, where you can press the button and rather than fill out the customer name, all the details, etc., it's going to go straight across. So from our side, what we look at is how technology can power the installer to move what is traditionally very much a fixed cost of doing business on their back end, which is limiting them, to become a variable cost, much smaller variable cost, and enable them to go faster with better throughput. There's a little bit about simplification of that journey as well, because as a lot of people in the room probably know, the journeys from DNOs, if you're with UK Power Networks, to say SB Energy is totally different. So whilst it should be the same, it's very different. So you have to manage all these different types of routes through there. And so software can really help guide that. Products like ENA Connect Direct, which we linked into, can make a big difference.
I also like to kind of finish on a bit of a positive, because that sounded quite complicated in some areas. Even I was trying to get my head around it. Not that it was negative, but on a positive note, can we just kind of, from all 4 of you, just talk about optimism in the industry? I know it's tough out there. I know it's difficult. I mean, the whole industry through construction is having a bit of a tough time. Unfortunately, it's the nature of the industry. I've been in it since 1990, and it's been like that. It really has. And it's always going to be like that, unfortunately, because we are an industry that depends on many different factors coming into play, whether it's planning permission, finance, interest rates, whatever it might be, skills when it comes to construction and getting houses built. It is quite a fluctuating industry, but I think very specifically within solar and renewables and efficiency savings, I think you talked about, energy efficiency savings. What are you optimistic about? What is it in the industry right now that you think, I'm really optimistic about that? You know, or something gives you hope? The fact that you wouldn't take the mic really scares me. No, genuinely, why are you scared to take the mic? So, hand on heart, do you think there's not hope in the industry? Because you wouldn't be in it otherwise, come on.
Yeah, look, I think it is a challenging industry at the moment. Consumer
everything's challenging at the minute, by the way, not just the industry.
Yeah,
but
absolutely. Consumer confidence is challenging, and therefore installers like Elliott, businesses like ourselves, are holding back on that investment, having that not a clear sight of, is the future home standard going to change? Is it going to improve? Is it going to get there? Is eco-funding going to be unlocked? Is homeowners going to want to install solar in the next 2, 3, 5 years? all of that drives uncertainty and therefore is a concern to, I think, many people in this room. On the positive,
I think another side of that though, because you talk about consumer confidence. Confidence is one thing, and money is another thing, and I know they can be linked. But with the cost of living crisis and everything else that's been going on, and the post-COVID world, I mean, it's still amazing that COVID was still relatively recent, and the economy is where it's at. If people don't have the funds to do it, they just can't do it, can they?
absolutely. And then look, I think some people do have the funds, but they're holding back to go. Actually, what is going to happen? What's happening with mortgage rates, and is it going down? Is it going up? Is it staying the same? And all that sort of stuff has a massive impact to, especially industries like the renewable industry, which is just at the edge of going. And then I think that the it's ready to go boom, but everyone's just holding back. And I think the optimism is, look, this is a great event here today. Many suppliers, many new technologies, and lots of great stuff in happening in the industry. And businesses like ourselves, businesses like the three other businesses here are so driving change and pushing that change. Business like ours, who's been selling, 100,000, 140,000 boilers, investing in renewable tech, is so great to see. And we're growing our sales team, we're growing our technical teams to help installers and really push forward in that industry. I think that's why I work for the business I work for. I just get such a great buzz out of it every single day, which is cool.
So you shouldn't have been scared to take the mic. That was a really good answer.
Gig to follow,
Yeah,
mate.
very good. Initially, you're like,
yeah,
don't
you
give me the
crossed it.
mic.
Scared after
What is he
that
talking
answer?
about? Hope and optimism. What does that mean? Elliot, what about you? What gives you hope and what keeps you optimistic
So
about
I
what's
think
happening?
for me and for every business that is in this room, and the whole reason that we come to these events is, especially here at Spark, putting the customer at the heart of everything that we do. We live in a very dark time at the moment with the cost of living crisis, but there is a reason why customers ultimately, if they're filling in forms, if they're inquiring about solar, air source, whatever it may be, a renewable solution, we are driving change. We are helping that customer to save money. There is a reason why they are getting in touch. So by offering a service to a customer, ultimately you are changing their life. You are doing something better, not just for their generation and their pocket, but for their children and their children's children. I think sometimes when we're in the trenches, we tend to lose that sight and that vision, and harvesting all of those positivities that come out of what we do day in and day out.
Excellent answer. Ian, I'm going to give you 1 minute.
Okay,
We're
1
out of
minute.
time. But go on, 1 minute. What makes you optimistic? What gives you hope?
So there's really two things which are coming together which I'm keeping my eye on, and that is very innovative funding models in combination with batteries. So there is the potential unlock within that to look less towards government funds to drive funded or funded works essentially, and use private CSR funds to be able to put solar on rooftops of people who are in fuel poverty, and through oversized batteries pay back those private investors and alleviate the problems on the ground. So I think that is a potential boom in the next 5 years, in combination with battery technology getting cheaper and being able to cycle that battery in probably more flexible tariffs. Personally, I think that's a huge area of growth.
Fantastic answer. Johnny? Hope, optimism.
My 6-year-old child at school a couple of weeks ago was asked to draw, as you hear about it all the time, what does your daddy do for work? Not what he used to do, what he does for work currently. Don't ask me, by the way. Don't.
That's why we're not doing a Q&A.
And it was really interesting because they draw the picture and then it goes up and then they bring it home, etc. And my little boy's drawn a picture of a house, and then on the side of the roof are solar panels. And I think if you'd have said that, 15, 20 years ago, 10 years ago when I was in school,
There would have been 2 chimneys on that.
it would have been two chimneys,
and
a big
smoke coming out.
coming
There would
out.
have.
And now I think if 6-year-old children now are understanding that there's a little white, well, my little boy calls it a PlayStation 5. It's not. It's actually a grow-up battery on the side of my house, but he thinks it's a PS5. If he's drawing a battery storage on the side of a house with panels on a roof, and he's saying this is what I don't, but he's saying that's what my daddy does. I think what it's done now is it's really showing me that the education, thanks to you guys as well, by the way, you guys are the ones who are responsible for
And girls,
educating
and girls,
and you're the ones who are educating the general public to understanding what we're doing in this real big room is actually going out there into the big bad world, and it's a really known product now. We speak about windows, doors, conservatories, they're the home improvement products. Solar and battery is a well-known home improvement product, and I think that for me is it's here and it's here to stay.
I'm just meant to be chairing it and not giving any input, to be honest with you. But I'm massively optimistic. I'm a cup half full person. I really am. As I said before, I've been in the industry since 1990. When we started doing houses just a bit before that, when I was on site with my granddad, there was no insulation going into cavity walls. They thought the cavity wall was enough. And that's not that long ago. That's in my lifetime. And then single glazing was still being installed just before that. And then double glazing just came in. And I mean, it's relatively, I'm not that old, it's a relatively short, it's a relatively short period of time. And for me, when you look at an event like this with a number of organisations here, and this is just the shop window, when you think about what's happening in the factories and in R&D and with engineers and technicians and all the testing that's being done and all the legislation that's going to be confirmed, that's an enormous amount of work, which basically means you've got an enormous army of people across the globe, I think, trying to do the right thing. And just seeing the messages of hope and optimism, whether it's been product development, whether it's technology, whether it's new methods of finance, which we have to look at, because if people can't afford to do it, we're just not going to be able to do it. But when I set up an educational charity in 2017 called the Ministry of Building and Innovation, it was all about engaging with young kids, mainly from kind of 6 through to like 14, 15 years old. And the conversations I have with them about the environment, and they're not just saying it because the words that they just hear in the news, they're saying it because they really believe in it and they really understand it. And there are cynics out there, just like he was with electric cars back in the day. There's always going to, at the minute, we had all this optimism, didn't we, in like the mid kind of 2015, 2016, that things are going to change and the Paris Agreement and all of those things that happen. And then we've got a backlash, a big backlash of people saying, can't afford to do that, can't afford to do that. No one's interested in that, no one cares about being green anymore. Absolute bollocks. Absolute rubbish. Generally, I think there will be cynics out there and certain technologies will be questioned. Of course there will, and we should do that. But I think overall we are pushing in the right direction because we know it's not just the right thing to do for the environment, but it's the right thing to do in terms of costs and energy efficiency and just doing the right thing. And I want to say a massive thank you to all 4 of the panelists from Hemel, Elliot, Ian and Johnny, and thank you for being here today. Enjoy the rest of your day and thanks very much. Take care.